I am writing a book on Pentecostal proclamation. The working title is Tongue on Fire, Pentecostal Proclamation in the 21st Century. Hi, everybody. Joseph Lear here with Pastoral Theology and Slow Burn Christianity on Substack. Chapter 4 is called Don't Forget to Prophesy. And of course, this title is based squarely, as are all the titles of all the chapters, on Acts chapter 2, where we get the first Pentecostal sermon ever by the Apostle Peter. And of course, on the day of Pentecost, Peter himself is prophesying, but he's also quoting other prophets like Joel and David. So there's kind of like prophecies within prophecies, or as Ezekiel might have put it, wheels within wheels. One of the tasks that I try to accomplish in this chapter is to define what I mean by the word prophetic. There's a number of things to say, but one of the things I really try to focus on is that I think prophecy is supposed to be apocalyptic. And of course, as soon as you say prophecy is supposed to be apocalyptic, I'm trying to define prophecy, but now I have to define the word apocalyptic too. The word apocalyptic has a lot of cultural baggage with it. Mainly, it's interpreted or understood as a word that signifies the end of the world or some sort of catastrophe. Biblically, though, the word really just means revelation or that which is revelatory. So the apocalypse at the end of the New Testament is called the revelation of Jesus Christ. And of course, this is something that many interpreters, many preachers of the book of Revelation have routinely missed, that first and foremost, the book is about revealing Jesus, not about revealing anything or anyone else. The book of Revelation is first and foremost about revealing Jesus for who he is, but it's also about revealing other things for what they truly are. In particular, about revealing things that masquerade as true and good and beautiful to be false and evil and, in fact, ugly. I think that's the best place to kind of like point to where this is abundantly clear. It begins in Revelation 13, where we get introduced to the dragon and then eventually the beast from the water and the beast from the earth. The beast from the earth in particular is said to have two horns, quote, like a lamb, which anytime you hear like a lamb in the book of Revelation, we're immediately supposed to think of Jesus because he is the lamb who was slain, who is worthy to open the scroll that no one else was worthy to open. So this beast has two horns like a lamb, but then we're immediately told that it speaks like a dragon. And this is revealing to the reader because, the world might see this beast as a Christ-like figure, something that masquerades as Jesus, but in fact, when we pay attention to what this beast who might look like a lamb in some instances, we recognize the dragon's voice. The same thing goes for like the beast from the water, who is said to have 10 horns and 7 heads, and the 10 horns are 10 kings, and the 7 heads are seven mountains. One of the things I think we're supposed to take from that is that this beast is ugly. I mean, there's no way of distributing that. Like, there's no parity or proportion. Compare that, of course, to everything that is said about God, and everything is kind of numerically beautiful. Anyways, the point is that the prophetic task is to reveal things in the world as they truly are, to open the eyes of both the church and the world to God's action in the world, and to open their eyes to the devil's action in the world through the dragon, the beasts, and so on. And to point out that things are not always as they first seem. So with that in mind, I have written a homily that I'm going to share with you now. And this homily is about the prophetic task of revealing things as they truly are by gazing into God's heavenly throne room. The church is called to be prophetic. As Peter himself said on the day of Pentecost when he was preaching, "As the Spirit is poured out on all flesh, so shall the sons and daughters of God prophesy." So the question for the church then becomes, how do we do that? Well, to prophesy is to see into heaven where God's reign is already perfect, and then to relay in word and in deed what we have seen in those heavenly realms. To prophesy is to peer into heaven and to compare and contrast what we've seen there with what we see here on earth. And then once we've compared and contrasted, then we can rebuke the evil and bless the Lord for his goodness. Of course, the best way of understanding what it looks like and means to prophesy is to look to the Bible for an example. So I invite you to join me in considering Micaiah, the prophet Micaiah, the son of Imlah, who we find in 1 Kings 22. Now, Micaiah, the son of Imlah, as I already said, was a prophet. And he was a prophet because the Spirit showed him God's throne room, so he could then prophesy in Ahab, the king of Israel's throne room. The story begins in 1 Kings 22 with a moment of apparent unity between Israel and Judah after they'd, split sometime earlier in the history of God's people. Ahab asks Jehoshaphat to help him take back the land of Ramoth Gilead, which he says belongs to him. Jehoshaphat immediately agrees that it's a good partnership, but he asks that they first inquire of the Lord before they go into battle. This happens throughout the Old Testament. Ahab agrees. So Ahab gathers together a whole bunch of prophets, 400 of them. And the prophets gather around the kings on their thrones, arrayed in their robes, in the threshing floor of judgment. With remarkable and perhaps unbelievable unity, every single one of the prophets agree. The kings should go to battle, for they shall win. One prophet, named Zedekiah, performs their anticipated victory by holding up horns of iron on his head, proclaiming that so shall the kings push the Syrians out of Ramoth Gilead. With such remarkable and celebratory unity, how could this not be the very truth of God? Jehoshaphat knows that it's either that or it's the depths of corruption. When a vote is unanimous, either God's in it or the devil is. There's no other possibility. So Jehoshaphat asks, is there not another prophet from whom we could inquire besides these 400 court prophets? Ahab responds, there's Micaiah, the son of Imlah. But Ahab says that he hates him because he never prophesies good, only evil. Jehoshaphat's reasoning here is reasonable, right? If even this disagreeable prophet named Micaiah agrees with the other 400, then surely God must have directed the vote. So they call him to the throne room with the other 400. All eyes turn to look at Micaiah, the son of Imlah. At first, he plays along, pretending to be the decisive 401st vote. But after Ahab presses him, he reveals himself to in fact be a true prophet, not just another lying one. He's a true prophet, we find out, because he alone has peered into heaven. He alone has weighed what he has seen there against what he now sees on earth. He has compared, he has contrasted, and boy, is the contrast profound. Micaiah says that he sees a throne room in heaven, comparable to the throne room he finds himself in on earth. He also sees God's throne surrounded by a whole host of heaven, again, comparable to the host of 400 that are around the earthly thrones. And just as one comes forward on earth as a spokesperson, the prophet Zedekiah with his horns of iron, so also one comes forward in heaven. He volunteers to be a lying spirit in the mouths of the prophets. The lying spirit says he will entice these 400 prophets to tell the kings to go to battle. God has played a prank on the kings and their court prophets. Not one of them, not even the horns prophet Zedekiah, has escaped the prank God has played on these kings. For all of the true comparisons, that on earth as in heaven there are thrones surrounded by ministering servants, the contrast is most profound. In heaven, there is truth. On earth, there are lies. The comparison makes a mockery of these earthly thrones. They think they rule. They think they see things as they are to make true and accurate judgments. They think they can hijack God's approval for their land grab. But all it takes is a practical joke from God to expose their foolishness. The church is called to be prophetic like Micaiah, the son of Imlah. We are not called to join the pep rallies of earthly power, but to patiently look into heaven. See God sitting on his throne, see what he's doing, and to announce his true power, to proclaim his true reign in all circumstances. Every king and queen's throne, every president's office, every judge's seat, every elaborate structure of church governance is but a laughable shadow of God's sovereignty. So, my spirit-filled sons and daughters of God, don't forget to prophesy. But as you do, remember that though it will always be good news to you and to the faithful, it's never good news for those who want sovereignty for themselves. We're told in the story that Ahab throws Micaiah, the son of Imlah, into prison for revealing heaven. And so we need to be warned. The church will never be fully at home in earthly seats of power. Kings may at times listen and humble themselves under God's reign, but more often than not, they won't. Nevertheless, we don't forget. We don't forget to prophesy. We, upon whom the Spirit is poured out, have not only seen God's throne room, but also his new heaven and new earth, which will come down out of heaven on the last day. Our boldness in the face of the devil's horns of iron is because we know that every knee of every ruler will one day bow before the throne of God. Amen.